Welcome again. So I think our moderator David might be having some technical difficulties. So if he joins, that's great, and it would be great to have him. Otherwise, we're going to get started though. So just wanted to again welcome everybody. Thank you for coming. My name's Evan. I work with Dextra, and Dextra is a global collaborative platform for artists and creative people, content creators, for people to connect and collaborate across the creative spectrum, whether you are a painter, a photographer, a VR artist, really anything across the board. So you can connect with other people and work together to kind of make your creative ideas become a reality. So we're happy to be working with our panelists today and with everyone else that's been involved with Allspace to put this on. And happy to have Steve and Sammy and Greg here today. So I'm going to let them introduce themselves, and then I have a few talking points that I'd like to bring up with them to go over for gaming. And then after that, I'm going to let them just kind of drive the conversation and go from there. Later at a later point in the discussion, we'll have some time for Q&A. So hold off on that right now, but you should see on the bottom right-hand side of your menu, there should be an Ask a Question button. So we'll get to that later, and people can feel free to ask questions. And thanks again for coming. And panelists, make sure that you guys are on air and have your megaphone turned on.
Sounds good. Yep, looks like I'm on air and on megaphone.
Yep, same here.
Great. So Sammy and Steve and Greg, why don't we start with Steve, if you want to introduce yourself and tell people a bit about who you are.
Sure. So, hey, everybody. I hope you can hear me okay. I've got the megaphone on. I'm Steve Bowler. I'm president of Cloudgate Studios. I've got over 20-year history making entertainment products. I got my start in traditional animation we were just discussing. I worked on Space Jam and Animaniacs, and then entered video games. Eventually wound up working on like Mortal Kombat 10. Sorry, I think it was 9. Anyway, it was the first Mortal Kombat reboot from a while back. And then kept working in video games in a smaller indie studio, and my business partner and I, we were the guys that put together the original Brookhaven Experiment demo, and that got so popular we decided to found Cloudgate. So we moved into our own VR entertainment company, and we shipped Island 359 out of early access last year. So that's me.
Great. Can you guys hear me? Hey, everyone. So my name is Sammy. I'm an entrepreneur in residence at Oculus VC, and we're a venture capital based in San Francisco. We invest in early stage VR, AR companies and other emerging tech. We've invested in a lot of companies doing exciting things in VR gaming. And I've been in the VR space for a while. Also worked at Vive, which produces entertainment VR content. But always the gamer across all different mediums, and definitely see like giant value in VR for gaming. I think it's one of the industries where the 10x value from shifting to VR is automatically clear, and it's a really big value prop compared to the alternative. So excited to be working in this space. Good to meet you all.
Hey, everyone. I'm Greg Catano, and I've been in the VR space for about 4.5 years. I've been in entertainment for about 20 plus years, media entertainment in Los Angeles, and did everything from production, 3D, and visual effects. And so when virtual reality came around, I just saw it as something completely game-changing, and I was super excited. My friends were really shocked because they were just thinking, wait a minute, you don't really get this excited about anything. You usually want to research it, and but I saw all the applications towards all enterprise. I saw medical and training and philanthropy and law enforcement. So I delved in pretty quickly, and so now I'm one of the partners and oversee operations for the U.S. for HoloGate. It's a multiplayer virtual reality system. and I'm also General Manager, VP of Business Development over at Phase 2. It's a co-working space, but we really made it all about frontier technology. And in about only about less than a year, we have our 1-year anniversary coming up. But in less than a year, we're about 90% capacity and have companies like Netflix and Rival Theory, artificial intelligence company, Consensus, a blockchain company. So yeah, not just VR, but all frontier technology to help the entire community. So thank you for having me, and really excited to be in alt space and in this virtual conference. I think it's really important to kind of stay progressive and push this forward. So thank you for being here and allowing me to present.
Yeah, thanks, guys. So a couple of questions to kind of get us started. One thing is, thinking about gaming and some of the traditional games that maybe we all grew up playing on Nintendo systems and things like that. VR has definitely changed the gaming landscape. So what are some of the kind of the first experiences, and then going forward, what do you think are some of the new experiences that a VR gaming system would allow, that is really kind of changing the way that players can experience the space around them and maybe the narrative that they're playing within? I know, Greg, you and I have played Hologate at Phase 2, and it's quite a lot of fun. So just kind of, what are some of the most unique aspects of VR gaming, and some of the most interesting to each of you? Steve, if you want to go first.
Sure. So I think when we looked at diving into VR and forming our own company to make VR entertainment, one of the biggest questions we always have to ask and there's lots of things that VR offered that traditional games don't, and that's what I think we all in this industry need to stay focused on. And things like presence is an easy one to talk about. Like, does the atmosphere of being in the environment supersede what you would get if it was just a flat pancake game? And you achieve that through lots of different reasons, like audio, effects, and atmosphere. But there's some big blue sky things that really help. One of them is, we call it scale, and I mean literal scale, right? Like in VR, you can be a giant or you can be an ant, right? And you can feel that way more than you feel in a pancake game, like a flat game. Right. And there's other things too that we've learned that we can get people to focus in on, which is emotion, and actually having that primal connection to the game. Horror games are real easy to make that connection, right? Like, can you scare somebody in VR? Which we did with Brookhaven Experiment, and to a lesser degree with Island 359. So those are a couple of things that we look at. The last one, I think, is the interaction with your world, that we call it being handsy, right? In VR, that any premium headset with controllers, that lets you, do this. And even here, we've got hey, I can finger guns at people on point, right? I can give people 2 thumbs up, right? You can mock clap. These are already things that I can't do in a traditional video game, and I'm not even picking things up and interacting with them and creating that, we call it, what is that, a proprioception, right? Where my hands are a real extension of my body, and I believe that. Those are the things that, when combined, make VR really special. So those are some of the things we look at, not even including multiplayer.
Yeah, I totally agree. I would say, there's definitely some category of games that do really, really well in VR, or in some sense, similar to what Steve was saying, you can feel that this medium is really made for this kind of categories, or vice versa. And things that you probably can't do in other mediums, or definitely can do as well. They thrive really well in VR. I would say there's also surprisingly, there's a bunch of basic game types or game mechanics that are kind of universal across different media. And even going back to arcade games, playing things like Pac-Man and so on. There's this kind of setup where you're just sitting alone in a room or whatnot, or with a group of friends, but you just, for some reason, you want to go and have this immersion and be a bit more escapist and just keep playing some Galaga or whatnot. And if you look at things like Space Pirate Trainer or like Beat Saber, these were like very surprising, like amazing hits. And you can play for hours and hours, and people all over the world, just get stuck in them and get pretty obsessed. And it's a very high probability. And in some sense, it's because of the immersion. Oh, sorry. You can't hear us? Can you guys hear us?
Yeah, I think you're good. Yep.
Okay, cool. Yeah, so I was saying, like, I think, the sense of immersion is oftentimes just underestimated, like how powerful that is. And if you look at like a lot of categories of gaming, whether it's things that people do on like mobile or on consoles, and people spend like hours after hours, and even in genres like solo play or some RPG and whatnot, I think that once you get immersed and like you forget about everything else and just you really buy into the game, you can do a lot of this in VR. But obviously, there's tons of other things that VR is natively much better for. In social VR, like what we're doing now, if this was a sort of like overarching game, maybe like an RPG and so on, I think that this is very powerful as well.
Yeah, totally agree. And the most significant thing that I felt was the immersion of something like Super Hot, where Super Hot is low polygon and it's a very simple game, but it's terrifying. When you get these red guys around you and they start to close in, that I actually feel the anxiety more than any other flat game, pancake game or a pancake experience, as Steve had mentioned. And that's when I knew that gaming had completely changed, when something that wasn't cinematic looking, it wasn't this high quality visual experience, but it didn't matter. It created that sense of anxiety and terror at times. So the other thing that I feel that is changing with gaming in VR is just the interactivity. I know that we can all be online with traditional PC gaming, but when you start to see an avatar, like a shapely avatar, when you can speak to each other in the game, then I feel that your brain accepts that you're there. And not to kind of shamelessly plug Hologate, but when it was built, I can't take credit for building it or building the games. It was created by my partners in Germany. And when I stepped into it, the most compelling thing that I identified immediately was the fact that I can see the other three people as these avatars. I can speak to them. And to me, seeing the shape and seeing the mannerisms being replicated as this simple avatar was enough for my brain to accept that I was completely, transported. And VR has transported me. VR has, even as an individual experience, has transported me into another environment. But as soon as I saw other people hanging out with me, it was completely different. I feel that once, when we're in the space by ourselves, and that, say, your friends are watching, that I don't think we really stretch out and let ourselves go in VR. But as soon as, just knowing that maybe your friends are going to be taking selfies with you, or they're going to poke you, or shock you out of the experience, I feel that doesn't completely allow yourself to let go. And as soon as I saw these, not just Hologate, but other multiplayer experiences, The Void, that's another really good one, and where you see each other, then I think that was one of the biggest game changers that I had seen.
Great, thanks. Just a couple quick notes too. For the audience, if you guys could all just please keep yourself on mute so we don't have any audio feedback, and then just try to keep this area clear so that we can have so everybody can see our panelists easily and the screen as well. To kind of going off of what you were just talking about, one of the things that I think is really interesting in gaming going forward, aside from just the normal increased interactivity with the space around you, is things like haptics. and different feelings and touch sensors and things like that that are being programmed into games now. So where do you think things are going in that regard, as far as, you know, things like sound panels being lined on walls, or people wearing different kinds of gear? And, you know, you think that there's kind of a point where everything's going to end up, or is, you know, we have a lot of these kind of separate avenues that different companies are going that seem to be kind of focused on, you know, one specific system or gaming experience?
I mean, I'll jump in. So, like, we really love the haptics that come by default with controllers, right? There's a big range for us to play with. I actually kind of wish there was one on the HMD as well, a little bit. I think that would have been really cool. And while I love haptics, like, I wish there were haptics in the Vive trackers, because, you know, we came up with that system. At least we were the first to show you could do it by putting them on your feet and one on your hips, where you get that full body avatar in VR. And I really wanted haptics on the feet, so that when, you know, you kick dinosaurs or you kick something in the room, you get that haptic feedback that you connected, right?
Cool.
But what we're finding is the same rule kind of applies in VR, I think, that applies in traditional gaming, which is, man, peripherals are always a risk, even when they're first-party peripherals. That if the hardware didn't ship with it, you're basically, your peripheral, your haptic vest, or, you know, your haptic full body suit, as cool as they are, is probably going to be destined for LBE and arcade, you know, situations, or enterprise, because consumers are way less likely to actually go out and buy that peripheral.
Right.
You know, and even if they do, now your target demographic is a 10, if you're lucky, 20% of the total VR market, which already is, you know, it's growing every year, but it's still, you know, it's always, we like to say, it's never as big as people wanted it to be, right? So I, you know, as content creators, as, you know, the software creators, the games and the entertainment, we always look at, like, well, what does everybody own? Well, you know, we know everybody owns a Vive or an Oculus Rift, or now, you know, to a lesser extent, the Windows mixed reality headset. And so we target for those platforms. So for haptics and stuff, we're always using the controllers. We love the best, like, we love all the other haptic. I think in a few years, only or warehouse arcade VR installations.
Right. So with haptics, Hologate had to look at the experience versus the throughput, and or take both into account. And we had tested some haptic suits, some haptic gloves, and we're going to be releasing a haptic vest very soon. But the one thing that we had to stop and consider is, what is the throughput for these family entertainment centers? The big thing with them is, you know, you want to make sure that the experience is good, but how much time is going to be taken putting the gear on and off? And so right now, you know, with a 5-minute game with Hologate, by the time that we clean off the headsets, get the next people in, it's maybe on average, you know, 7 minutes, 5-minute game, 2 minutes for a turnaround. But when you start putting on a bunch of different haptic accessories, then that may stretch out the time to 10 minutes and over. And that means that you're getting less money for the family entertainment owners. So yeah, that's something that we wrestle with. But yeah, I'm sure that there's going to be a happy medium for the home market, as you mentioned, Steve. Absolutely. You know, now you really feel that not only am I in this immersive world, but I'm actually getting that feedback, that haptic feedback. I think that, you know, I can't even imagine what that's going to be like. So 100%.
Yeah, that's interesting. And Greg, that kind of leads into our next question too, and something that you and I have talked about a bit. But when you're thinking about designing games now and people that are looking to design a gaming experience, what are some of the different things that they would have to take into account now versus even a few years ago if they're looking at VR gaming, and if they're going to try and program in haptics and all of these other features, and then thinking about kind of the economics of these gaming systems and who is the end market, and maybe is it worth it to do some of those things. So maybe if Greg, you want to just take that, and we'll come back the other way to follow on your last comments.
Sure. So I would mention to everyone out there is that you need to take into account the cost of the game. And I know that we're all used to hearing about these larger gaming companies spending millions and millions of dollars for one title. Well, let's also consider that there isn't a huge distribution or a bunch of distribution platforms for virtual reality. And because of that, how will we ever make that money back right away if we're spending way too much on the game? So there's that balance of the quality versus what's good enough. And I even hate saying that as I start to mention that, like, never lived my career as good enough. We always tried to strive for the best, but yeah, there's that reality is that we're all pioneers in this room, and everyone listening at home, and we're all in this really exciting time, but we also have to mitigate our risks, mitigate our challenges, and make sure that we're not doing the same things that we've traditionally done in the past. In the past, we're working with mediums that have been around for a really long time. Come on, cinema has been around for 100 years. So there's been distribution out there for a lot longer than we've been around. But because we're pioneers, we're having to look at everything, not just the content creation, but also how am I going to get it out there? And the one question that I seem to ask everyone in the audience of other talks that I've been on is, if you're a content creator and as you're sitting thinking about what you're going to be creating, also consider the distribution, or actually make the distribution the number one consideration and work backwards. So you think about, okay, what's out there? Is it Void? Is it Hologate? Is it, how many headsets are actually out there between the Rift and the Vive and the Goes, and take all that into account and understand what people are looking at, what people are actually experiencing out there, and then say, okay, do I have to spend millions on a game, or can I get away with something around 500,000 and less? And even then, will I make my money back? I mean, that's something that we have to think about. Or as we're working with these different IP holders, the different media companies that have IP that we're discussing future titles with, is that we want to make sure that they're not having the same expectations yet as they've done in the past with these, say, movie titles or movie IPs, where they go, we're basing it on tens of thousands of movie theaters. Well, in VR, we're talking about, less than 1,000, in the family entertainment sector, and, maybe a few million in the consumer side. So, yeah, really think about the costs and average that out based on what the distribution is.
Mm-hmm.
Absolutely. Yeah. There's a few things we talked about, right? I just want to add some points on that. So basically, I totally agree with Greg on, thinking of like what's good enough. I would phrase it more as like, what's just right. I would say, like, in many cases, it's not only a cost consideration or kind of like a design time and effort spent into it, but it's also about the actual output that you get out of it and what do users want. Who's that person under the ground? Are you okay? Someone's drowning. Yeah, so Yeah, like to take an example like Altspace, it's not a gaming environment, but like, it's the easiest way to look at it right now. The fidelity of avatars is not hyper-realistic, but it's pretty good. I think it's just right. Like probably you can make it a bit more realistic, but it's pretty well positioned on that uncanny valley. And I think uncanny valley works across tons of other dimensions, not only the physical appearance of someone, but also like the environment you're working with, like for the game mechanics. If you're playing something like Angry Birds, you probably don't want to be like shooting like real stones on like real birds and like killing them and seeing blood splash. It's the genre of the game like suits itself really well for this kind of like I would call it just right of how much effort you're putting into the realism and all sorts of other dimensionalities other than realism. And I think the same thing goes for all sorts of other peripherals or factors you think of. Like I think the example that Greg gave and Steve earlier concerning haptics, especially in the context of family entertainment center or these places where you kind of go to experience VR and LBE. If you think of other parallel industries, so for example, let's say you're going to an amusement park and you want to go to a roller coaster, right? Again, shifting a bit away from gaming and we go back to the parallel. So if you wait in line for like 20 minutes, which is what a lot of users have to do usually in like these crowded places, especially as VR picks up more. You're in line for 20 minutes and then your turn arrives and you're trying to get positioned into that roller coaster, but there's like 10 minutes of setup where someone has to give you a specific vest and like adjust some kind of microphone and headphone on your head and give you some special gloves so you really feel the vibration of the thing, and then there's something for splashing water on top of you. And then the roller coaster just lasts for 30 seconds. You'll be like, what was that, man? Like I spent, 35 minutes waiting and then I got that and it was such a disappointment. There's also like, beside, there's a lot of relative factors for the user experience and for the delight that you get out of it that are very specific to the distribution channel you're using, but also to like, what is the context in which the user will be experiencing that genre of gaming and what is the best way to give them what they need. Like in many games, in VR or others, people just want to sit on a couch and move like two thumbs. And like they want to have very simple mechanics, but just get immersed in it. And that's not wrong. It's not that because we can do 700 degrees of freedom, we have to do it for everything. There's a place for all these kind of tools that VR gives us. And obviously there's a lot of exciting things and innovative things that we can do when we make the most out of them. But that's not always the best decision for the user. And that's definitely not always the most financially sound decision.
Yeah. Steve, you can comment too. I just want Sammy, for people who might not be familiar with the term, can you explain what the uncanny valley is?
Sure. The original definition, I think, came out of when CG graphics started making faces look more real, and the term came up because there's it's hard to describe without being able to draw the graph right on the wall for it. But the idea is that the higher there's a line that said like the higher we got to reality, and like reality was up here, and the higher and the closer we got to facial graphics for humans and emotion, on screen looking more like a real human, that like the farther away we actually got. Like it looked really good. And then as soon as we started getting like eyes that could focus and like face textures, all of a sudden people were like, this looks creepy and it looks really unreal, right? And it dropped all the way down into this thing we call the uncanny valley at the bottom, because it's like we know that there's luminescence to skin, and we got that working, right? That skin actually absorbs light, and you actually start seeing like, you might not notice it, but unconsciously you do that. You can actually see the veins under people's skin, and it's really faint. And when it's not there, it looks less real, right? And so like even adding that stuff and all these layers of detail and everything, we just kept getting further and further away. It looked more and more creepy. And until eventually, I think we finally, right? Like now, the ability to replace actors and, do young versions of actors now, flashbacks and things, that I feel like we finally crossed it. That uncanny valley was this, at least in film, was this period of time where as the graphics improved, we actually felt like we were getting more distant from and having a lesser connection with the characters on screen. So, and we can apply that to VR as well, right? So
yeah, very nice description.
Yep,
so in other words, Steve, are we in the uncanny Legoland right now?
Kind of, right? Like, this looks great. Like, we're all these cartoony avatars right now, right? Like, and you live it. You're like, yeah, that's, we got Sam, Greg, Steve, everybody's here, right? Talk to them. But like, if we kept adding technology to the faces right now and the bodies, it would look weird and it would look creepy, right? Like, it wouldn't have this like cartoony offset that we're okay with, because cartoony's cute and friendly and non-threatening.
Right.
And, so we can't apply what film did to VR yet, just because the GPUs in real time haven't caught up with, the half a day render time of one frame that film gets to offset their
That's right.
tech with, right? So
Yeah, a good
And you have to
example
find
if people want to think about it is when this was explained to me is if you think of the movie Beowulf, that was one where
Right.
the
So it came to
graphics
mind.
were a little creepy to some people. So going back to gaming now and thinking about, you have all these different modalities of feeling that are being introduced, and whether it's water being splashed on or even scent and feeling and things like that. But then looking at the ease of people to play VR games and thinking about wireless technology. And do you think that, are we going to remain tethered for a while on games, or do you have to give up some of the higher end functionalities of gaming if you want to go wireless? Where do you think the future of that is going, and the size of the devices that we might be using too?
Right. Can I take this one?
Yeah, go ahead, Gary.
So right now, for all of you that may not know, but with Hologate, we're tethered. We're actually cabled from the computer to the headset. And so you have the 4 computers up on top with the cables coming down to feed the 4 players. And that seems to work really well, just because we've got the throughput, we've got 90 frames a second, so that we can, eliminate any, judder, any motion sickness. And we've been hit up all the time. People are asking us all the time, so when are you guys going to go wireless? And, we tested some wireless systems, but as we all know, it's not quite there yet. It seems to be this latency that will induce a little motion sickness. So we've stayed away from that. But a big thing that we had discovered working with all these family entertainment centers is that their stuff gets stolen all the time. That if whether it be an escape room, an arcade game, a laser tag system, that they have to take inventory almost daily because their stuff goes missing. And it was almost this happy accident where these family entertainment center owners were saying to us, "It's so great that you guys have these cables, or else these headsets would be going missing all the time." So there was that consideration. We said, yeah, even though these amazing headsets are coming out, like, I'm really excited about the Quest. If you don't know about the Quest, it's Oculus's new headset that is right in between the quality of the Go and, I would say, the Rift. Would you guys think that? But quality is going to be incredible. It's coming out in April of next year, and I see that as a very viable product for location-based entertainment. And what we're probably going to see is, a much larger arena space, play space, where people are running around with these headsets. And that's going to change the game. So I'm excited about that.
Yeah. I think to play off of what you said, like, wireless is really cool. Like, I'm tethered right now, and you guys probably can't see it, but I keep turning my head to the left because my Vive Pro cable keeps rubbing on the chair that I'm sitting in, and it creates friction. It's annoying, right? Like, I'm doing it now. Like, I can't stand it. But the problem is to deliver, the fidelity that I see in the Vive Pro. Like, you either need a cable or you need, like, the Y-gig adapter, which is, increased cost. And like you said, an ounce of potential latency in delivering the graphics. So, and
Right.
as cool as the Oculus Quest is, and undoubtedly it's amazing, right? It's really cool. you're right. It's not the same fidelity of, the Rift or the Vive, right? And so you're into the do I need, so you get into that, that premium space thing. Like you said, like Quest gives you the opportunity in an arena, like in an arena LTE, of going tetherless and letting people run around. And, previously to get that experience, you had to wear backpack VR, which is like 20 pounds of gear on your back, right? Which means that now your age limit is actually higher for the experience. Like, we went to Disney World and I didn't push to have us play the Void Star Wars experience, even though I would have loved it and my 9-year-old would have loved it, because chances are they would have refused my 9-year-old from playing it, because she's 56 pounds and she'd have to carry half her body weight in a backpack VR rig, right? With a vest and everything else. So it really does open up opportunities like that if you're okay with a lower graphical fidelity. So it's really, I like to look at it as the Quest is undoubtedly amazing technology, but it's just the beginning of realizing the potential of what we can do and where we can go when we get to true tetherless premium VR, right? Whatever that is. So, whatever that realization is, whether it's YGig plus, PC, whether it's truly inside out, self-contained, like a Quest type device, like wherever that is, we can see that now I won't have to fight with my stupid tether hitting my chair, right? And that'll be great. So, yeah, I'm in, like I want it. I just don't know, when it's going to be mainstream and everybody will have it, right?
Yeah, absolutely. I would say, I totally agree with all these points. I also want to look at a slightly different perspective when it comes to all these different innovations on the hardware side and all the form factors. If you look at basically the past few years of VR and how headsets have evolved dramatically fast in relative terms compared to decades and other things. But basically, when we start with, we had the DK1, DK2, and all these different things. I'm talking about the latest consumer wave of VR, obviously. And for a while, a lot of people creating content or involved anywhere in the ecosystem where they have a very clear vested interest in the content picking up, they kind of explained away a lot of shortcomings of the content based on some limitations of the hardware itself. And in many cases, that's true. But in many other cases, that's kind of like an irrelevant or moot point, and I think the thing that excites me about the big evolution we're getting in the next generation of headsets is it's kind of like, you kind of run out of excuses as to why some content is not doing well, or why we're not really striking a nerve where what users really, really want, and how we're gonna design better things for people. So, we're getting rid of the cable, got rid of the outside-in sensors and all the need to set up and do all this kind of mess at the beginning, getting rid of the fancy computers needed, even the backpacks, getting rid of everything. Now we have 6 DOF controllers, 6 DOF headsets, and later this year we're gonna have all these things in an all-in-one lightweight headset. We're gonna get even better ergonomics coming soon. Audio is taken care of. Pretty much everything is being solved. And now it really makes you think as a content creator, okay, if I'm not doing well, either I'm not designing the right game, or I'm focusing on the wrong users or the wrong genres or whatnot, or literally maybe this whole thing shouldn't be done in VR, or maybe I'm going at the problem in the wrong direction, or maybe are we too early, or it makes you really think at the root causes, which I think are things people try to shy away from by just explaining away on other things. And sure, obviously there's a lot of things that suck about having all these other limitations, and the things you can do with VR right now, or the delight you get and the frictionless experience is way better than 2-3 years ago and 4 years ago. But hey, people built awesome games in the 50s and 60s. They used to be game-changing games, pun intended, where people just go and points from the giant. The fact that the time screen was this one interface, and you can make games with that. And monetize it different way, but it took some time to figure out. And it's been a few years with this latest consumer VR wave, where it's finally kind of hitting the mainstream in some sense. And I think I'm excited as for these reasons to just move off the table and we can focus on making the content really, really better and figuring out like why we're not killing it yet in that sense, and are we understanding users correctly, and all these other considerations.
Yeah, great. Well, I think we're gonna take some audience questions here in just a second. I know that we started a little bit late, but if there are any kind of quick closing points that either of you would love to mention as far as the gaming space, feel free, and then we'll take some Q&A.
I think with the I'm sorry. Go ahead, Steve.
No, I think I'm good. Go ahead.
I think one technology or one what am I trying to say? One technique that we're experimenting with, we just used it on our recent zombie game, is we're using photogrammetry. And what photogrammetry is basically it's taking high-res imagery of an environment, and you're going to be able to pick up all the textures and the colors, and it just really enhances the gaming. And knowing that you can use these different volumetric scanning systems that are out there, like Metastage or with Blue Vishnu, that you're going to get high-res scans of people, and using photogrammetry, you're going to get high-res scans of the environments. I think that that's going to take virtual reality gaming to the next level, because then not trying to reach that or trying to wrestle with the uncanny valley again, but I think it definitely enhances the experience. So I'm really excited about that. Oh, and just to let everyone know, my headset power is low, so if I disappear all of a sudden, you'll know why. It's not that I'm being rude or had to run to the restroom or something.
Right.
Hang in there, Greg.
All right. Well, we can jump over to Q&A. And Greg, quick point on that. Greg and I were playing that zombie game, and he told me that the setting was an actual scan of a warehouse in Germany, which made it that much creepier. So it is a pretty cool technology.
Thanks.
All right. So let's see. If anybody does have a question, again, please look down on the right-hand side of your menu. There should be a little Ask a Question button. So feel free to do that. Colleen, looks like Colleen has a question. Colleen, go ahead and unmute yourself and ask.
Hi, thank you. Great to learn about all the different tech and hardware and distribution.
Yeah, hey, sorry, it's just a little hard to hear you. You might, as you're one of our panelists, you might have megaphone too, so if you could turn that on, we should be able to hear you better.
Can you hear me now?
Oh, yeah.
Much better, thanks.
Much better.
Great.
Very nice.
Okay, cool. Hi, thank you so much. It's fascinating. I don't come from a gaming background, so you taught me a lot about that interactive physical distribution side, but I'm curious from you guys have this amazing responsibility and creative role in our whole cultural society, developing content from, I'm thinking of like Kelly McGonigal, Kelly Santiago, their kind of approach. You know them, correct? Maybe? Do they sound familiar? Kelly McGonigal talks a lot about the use of games to collectively solve and look at some of our bigger problems in the world. And Kelly Santiago has games like Journey and Flower that are immersive, but so I guess I was wondering, I'd love to know from all of you some of the future of the content, how VR is so, like you said, it's so physical. What types of new visuals and experiences to create the feelings or the goals of the society, do those come into play in your gaming development? Does that make sense a little?
I totally understand the question. I now that you mention them, I'm familiar absolutely with the body of work, and McGonigal sounds really familiar. I wish we had the wherewithal to pursue those things at our studio. Unfortunately, our studio's mission statement is like, we want to put you in that, like the action movie blockbuster explosive thing, right? So at our studio, we don't do it as much. We definitely try and be mindful of those things, especially when it comes to things like preventing harassment and abuse in VR online and things like that. We kind of try and help with that sort of thing behind the scenes. Like there was a point where when we were entering, I won't say who it is, we were entering another VR social space, similar to Altspace, but it wasn't Altspace. And as VR developers, we had all jumped in. And one of my friends, who's a woman developer, fairly prominent in the industry, immediately became harassed, both virtually, physically, and verbally and sexually in their space. I'm not going to say who it was because I don't want to throw anybody under a bus, including the studio, because we are so young and everybody is trying their best as developers, right, to do the right thing. And we had tried, she had tried to put all the safety constraints up that she could to prevent it, and she couldn't get them up in time till it happened, and it really shocked her. And so because of the connections that we all have and we all made early on in the VR industry, we sort of immediately got in touch with the CEOs of that company, and they were cool enough that we all jumped on a conference call and we talked about how we could make those things safer in the future for everybody else. So we do try and do it, and we try and help, and through, whether it's just peer consulting, right, or chatting with other developers. And we are mindful of it. We do try and make sure that we're not leaving those spaces open for harassment when we make these things that we're making.
Do you have consulting, female or people to kind of help jump in? Now that you brought that up, it's a great point.
So what we would wind up doing is we don't have anybody explicitly on our end that we use or pay or go to, because we're totally indie. We're a very small studio with very small budgets, right? And so what we do though is we're working on our second game right now, and don't tell anybody, it's a multiplayer game. And so what we're about to do is reach out to all of our VR developer friends and have them jump in with beta keys, and it's super, super closed beta just with our developer friends. And included in that are some of these women developers, right, that we're friends with, because we want everybody's perspective on it, and we want everybody's just lay it on us, what's right, what's wrong. And really we're more interested in what's wrong, so we can fix it before we go to launch. So those are the kind of things that we wind up doing. And we hope that helps, but I can't say that we're out to solve social issues through our games right now, because unfortunately games is still a business, and I have to say we do need to make money at it, because ultimately it's paying for the house that I'm talking to you from right now, right? That it pays for the roof over my house and my kids' education. So right now we're focused on, hey, let's just get to solvency. Let's just get to the point where we're in the black and we're making money. And if we have the opportunity to change the world through our games for the better, we would definitely love to do that.
Thank you.
Thanks, Colleen. So we have some more audience questions, but let's take one from YouTube that's on the screen behind you right now. So Elizabeth asks, how do you think about the role of empathy and emotional resonance when developing games? And do you think about the emotional impact on your audience? Kind of a nice follow-on from Colleen's.
Does anybody else want to jump in? Because I can keep going.
I think you can.
Yeah, how do you guys do it in Stargate?
Or Sammy.
No, go ahead.
Yeah, Steve, you want to take that one again?
Sure. Okay. So when we first were developing Brookhaven Experiment, we were absolutely leveraging this in a way where we wanted you to be scared. I had written a white paper a while ago about the mechanics of fear and about how to make people afraid. And the takeaway isn't jump scares, and it's not boom and getting in your face. Fear, if you just break down how a horror movie works, they are inducing fear because all of the protagonists have a lack of control, right? That the bad guy, whether it's Johnny Hockey Mask or Freddie Longnails, right? They have all the control. That they're in charge, right? And they're unstoppable, and right. Think of it like you versus a bear, right? Who's got the control? The bear. It's gigantic. It's 3 times my size, right? It could eat me. The best I could do is maybe hurt its nose. Like, I don't have a lot of options. So think of it when you're building horror that way. So we did things like where we made the gun reload frustratingly long, right? And we made, we made sure that you had a finite amount of ammunition. So now you had to think like, I can't waste it, and right. And we made the zombies and the bad guys slow, so that you would wind up with the situation where they weren't hard to beat, but now you had 12 of them around you because you let them get closer, because shooting them far away meant it was a tougher shot, so you're wasting that precious ammo. So like we created a mechanic other empathy, empathy, how we're affecting our audience a lot. And the easiest one to do is invoke that fear, and that sort of thing. The things that I'm really interested in that they're harder for us to sell product with, but like we read about them and we look at them all the time, and we even worked on one of the things that makes this work is like physical empathy, where like I like you have a real space and a real body, right? Where like I am going to respect you as a person and not harass you because I see you're a real person, right? Let's like remove the anonymity of the two people standing in the room and force you to have empathy for this human being who's standing here because
Right.
they have a full body and they have, a real presence and a real sense in the room. So, we do think about that sort of a thing and like, how can we increase, empathy for our fellow human through mechanics and technology and things like that. And it's not easy. It definitely, every time we make a feature like that around empathy, we're losing a mechanical feature or what we call like a saleable feature, right? Because what we're doing is we're improving the aesthetic, but it's like the emotional aesthetic of the application. So it's always a balancing act.
Interesting.
Makes a lot of
Thanks.
sense.
Vasil, you have a question?
Yeah, can you hear me?
Yeah, feel free to walk up a little closer so we can hear you.
Hi, Vasil.
Hello, I'm a 15-year-old VR developer, and in maybe 2-3 months, I'm going to be releasing my first VR game. I would like to ask if you
Awesome.
can give me any tips for how can I promote my game into the Steam and the other apps.
I would suggest, at least as far as I always jump in on these things, but this is stuff I work on. If you guys have
No,
suggestions,
go ahead.
fire away. I would suggest, especially as a 15-year-old, who I imagine you don't have, like a $20,000 or a $50,000 marketing budget to spend. I'm just going to assume. Sorry for the assumption. Is if you're ready to release it in 2 to 3 months, you should have something that's finished or near finished that you can start showing now to like gain interest in it. So I would suggest to start tweeting it out, right? Like get on social media, start promoting your game through, videos of it, right? Live streams of it, like as much as you can. And I'm going to warn you now, you're going to be frustrated early on. It's not easy to generate social support. Like things going viral is there is and there isn't a science to it. Like a lot of it is luck. But your best bet now, if you have 3 months to go before you release, is start showing it now, especially as someone without a name, right? And without a presence.
Yeah.
Like the Beat Saber teaser, 30-second teaser video they did was literally their entire marketing for their release. That, that developer has made other things before and has a lot of currency among other developers and platforms in the industry. But that video is what did it for them. And I'm not saying you're going to have that. That's a once every couple of years level of crazy viral success for a teaser video. But showing your stuff early and often and showing progression is how you're going to gain interest for it before you go to launch.
Yep. Can I just add something to that? Thanks, Steve. Vasily, you mentioned you're 15 years old, like launching your first game to the world, right? I don't know if you can hear us. Yeah. So I want to say that's awesome, and congrats, and it's a big moment. And let's just try this. Are these claps popping up? Okay. I want to just take a slightly different approach and say that, again, not to insinuate anything or assume anything like Steve was saying, we're just, taking it as a blank canvas. I would say definitely do all these, follow all these tips and try to make it as big of a success as possible. But I think the currency that is most valuable to you right now is just literally, if this is something that you're passionate about, getting as much as you can from this industry. And I think just you can start growing a following, and tapping into all these developer communities, and people are willing to help, especially they see that much passion and someone trying to put it out there for the word and iterate on it, from early access. And I would say just try to, as much as possible, get into those subreddits, and social media, and just publish things before you're 200% comfortable with them, and then just talk to other developers and creators and iterate on it with them. And as he was saying, a giant part of this is luck, way more than people realize. We're in the business of funding companies, and we would be first to tell you, luck plays a giant role, fortunately or unfortunately, depending on where you end up on that side of luck. But one thing that is known to work is that the more you put into this industry, the more you will get out of it, at least in terms of super valuable connections that are going to serve you for decades to come. Real friendship that you'll make from people who just look at something you're creating and be like, oh, have you tried this? And this will be worth years of your efforts or some other kind of financial commitment. So I would say definitely put your game out there, talk to the developers, put in early access. People just give it not that much of a hard time, even though the internet is mean many times. But just keep trying, build things and ship them. And I think you're doing it the best way I know of.
Thank you.
Yeah, good luck. And if you have a trailer or anything too, feel free to share it on your profile with the Dextra community. And thanks for being here. Alex.
Great question.
Alex, you have a question?
Yes, can you guys hear me?
Yeah, feel free to walk up a little closer, and I can hear you better, and then we can repeat there, perfect.
There we go. Thank you. So I noticed you guys talked a lot today about single player experiences, which are obviously very important in where VR is at right now. But I was curious what your thoughts were on the multiplayer experience, because to me, I'm very excited about Orbis VR and, getting into VR and then killing a dragon with 5 of my friends and storming the castle, that sort of thing. So I was curious what your thoughts were on how the industry is going in that direction.
Great. So the question is thinking more about multiplayer experiences and being able to play with your friends and where the industry is going in that regard.
Yeah, I can speak on that. Yeah, thank you. Great question, by the way. So we do everything in multiplayer for all of it. I realized the first time I saw that it was a single player experience. People would complain about it being very isolating. So I said, what is going to crack the code on that? What is going to help that? Because other thing that would be brought up into conversation would be, well, we're going to bring VR to the theaters. And again, I'd be challenged with the thought of, well, is it just going to be rows and rows of people in headsets by themselves? Well, why do we go to the theater? It's to get the audience reaction. It's to, look over to the person that you're with and say, wow, that was an amazing, that was a scary scene, or grab the hand of the person next to you. I mean, it's a social experience. So when I came upon Hologate at our VR Arcade, I'm part of the VR Arcade VR Festival with Chris Crisatelli, and it was about how do we start to figure these things out. So it's a not-for-profit setup where we wanted the foot traffic, we wanted the feedback from the people, and allow the community to be able to share their experiences. And that would always come up like multiplayer. How are we gonna do that? So that is when I came across the Hologate guys from Germany, and they it's avatars, but the avatars are getting, or what did you say, Sammy? It's just right. It's just right where you actually feel that you're getting the mannerisms of the people, and you feel that you're hanging out with three of your friends. And to us, we're not really going to do anything but multiplayer, because I almost feel that in a way that is what really convinces that we're in another space. It's a reason to get out with our friends, and that's why laser tag is so big. That's why escape rooms are so big and successful right now, is that we're getting out of the house, we're going to a place, we're hanging out, maybe having some drinks, having some dinner, but then we're all going to a place like 2-Bit Circus, where, if you don't know what 2-Bit Circus is, it's a micro amusement park in Los Angeles in the Artist District, and they wanted to create the next generation of that, and almost all their experiences are multiplayer, not just VR. It's maybe throwing a ball at this digital wall that you have to pop balloons, but they see the importance of multiplayer. So 100%, Alex, that's what I think we should be striving for with virtual reality for the future.
Great.
So
Thanks, Alex.
for the question.
I appreciate it.
Then a couple more questions from Chris and then Alina. So Chris, you have a question?
Yeah, can you hear me?
Yep, we can hear you great, Chris.
Awesome. My question is in regards to risk management through best practices. So I'm kind of new in VR development, and as I design a TDD or a game design document and trying to understand what things to avoid, you mentioned with your white paper, you change the experience to better fit VR. Do you guys have documented best practices or resources that you go to?
So risk management and best practices in developing your games. Any resources you might use, I think, was a question.
You guys mind if I jump in on this?
Not at all.
Yeah, go ahead.
So,
You're a guest.
like year one of VR in 2016, we were lucky enough that Epic, makers of the Unreal Engine at Steam Dev Days, did like a hosted talk of like shipping your game on Steam VR using the Unreal Engine, and they asked CloudGate to come and talk about it, because at that point we were the only company, or I'll say the only individuals, who were responsible for shipping 2 VR games in Unreal 4 in 2016, right? And so we devoted like an hour of our talk to what we use as our best practices. So if you're interested in it, go find that talk. It's on YouTube. Just Google my name, Steve Bowler, on YouTube with Unreal or Steam Dev Days in your search, and it should be the top hit. Wes is the Epic employee who was on the talk, so you'll see his name in there too. And I'd say watch that, but it's like an hour and a half long. So it's a long, like drawn out, like super deep dive. I can answer the question real quickly here. And what we found is like managing your scope and your TDD and your GDD is important. But I would say if you're a small developer, just like throw those documents out and start iterating on your game, because if it's not fun, it doesn't matter what's in your TDD and your GDD, right? Like when you're small, like the only way you're going to get your indie game to have any traction at all is if it's really fun and it has some novel concepts that people are doing, right? And you can't paper design that. And then once that starts working, or even to get to that point, what we do is we offset all of our cost and our risk by, we go to the marketplace and we see, did somebody else solve our mistakes for us before we have to dive in and use our very expensive resources to make that same thing. So we go and we find, sometimes there's VR mechanics packs, right? They have like VR locomotion solved. Oh, cool, we don't have to make that. Somebody made it. We will happily pay their fee to offset all of our cost and our risk to get that, right? Oh, somebody made a building set that's really close to the buildings that we wanted in our game. Oh, we're going to offset our risk and our cost and our budget to just buy that instead. And you do lose a little something in well, you run the risk if somebody else has those buildings in their game too. So you can't use those things for your hero assets, but you can use them for literally everything else in your game, right? Like your guns, sometimes a couple of enemies, not all of them, right? Your trees, your foliage, your landscape, your background sets, like definitely offset all of your risk and your cost. Go to the marketplace, see if somebody made that mistake first, right? See if somebody took that risk first. And can you offset your risk and your cost by buying their risk and their cost from them? Like just do that. And then focus on your unique mechanics and your unique concepts that makes your game special that can't be sold on a marketplace, right? And that's to me, that's the fastest way. That's the long and short of our talk. We do a deep dive on it. We talk about it in audio, and we talk about it in art, and we talk about it in game mechanics, and we talk about how we build our engine mechanics smartly in a way that we can reuse them internally often, right? So I would suggest try watching that talk because that's the best resource I can give you because we literally we show how we do everything in the talk.
Yeah, but by the way, Cloudgate really knows what they're doing. It's a top studio. So anything Steve is telling you,
thank you.
It's probably no. I mean, it's a fact. One extra dimension I would add to that, Chris, is there's tons of best practices. Obviously, like Steve was saying, that also comes from game engine developers or platforms like Facebook design and all sorts of things for Oculus. But I would also say next dimension to look at is the genre that you're in. If you're building a social VR, or virtual world, you also want to look at what specifically someone like Altspace, or Fidelity or VR Chat or Sensor has been putting out there because there's a lot of specific problems to be solved in these virtual worlds or social VR environments that are not transferable to other genres. And a lot of these people spend years and tons of money, and a lot of people I know at places like Altspace have suffered a lot to figure out what's just right. And even basic things that you see in your menu around you, how you interact, how there's 7 modalities probably right now at this moment in time connecting from Rift to Go to desktop and whatnot. And all of these things are idiosyncratic to specific VR genres. So I'll also look at these. But for general best practices, everything Steve said, absolutely agree.
Great. Thanks, Chris.
Thank you.
Alina.
Thanks, Chris.
Hey guys, thank you very much. Arcade games and having the opportunity to try out the Quest a couple of weeks ago. I'm curious, are you exploring the field of AI and also giving users a more customized experience, especially in the field of horror? So yeah.
Thanks. So are you guys exploring the use of AI, especially in things like horror, to kind of amplify the gaming experience?
Okay, so,
Let's see. That's a really good question. I'm trying to see if it's actually AI, but I know that companies like 2-Bit Circus and Hollowgate will be taking the data of the gameplay, not the personal data of the players, but actually what they enjoyed or what hone in on what really stuck with them in the experience, and then with the cards that they take to 2-Bit Circus and the cards like they have at Dave & Buster's or these other family entertainment centers where you charge it up and then you play all the different games around the space. 2-Bit Circus has the same device, same with all the family entertainment centers that have Hollowgate. And what that'll do is that it'll learn from your experiences with every game that you play. The next time you jump on there, it'll know what presettings you had or what things you may have reacted to better. So I know that there is some studies going into that, and I think that that's gonna really change the game, so to speak. I don't know if that answered your question. I hope it did.
Yeah, Alina, are you referring to like, AI, like as a game AI, like a character in a game, or you mean like artificial intelligence in the sense of machine learning, and deep learning and tools needed to basically algorithmically generate some kind of things other than character AI, basically?
Actually, I was more curious of actually using deep learning and really give you like a customized experience. So I think especially AI and deep learning, there's a huge unused potential, especially when it comes to gaming.
Yeah.
Yeah. And
Yeah.
I was just
I'll
curious
try to
if
answer
you guys
that.
are exploring in that field.
Yeah, totally. So I think it's a very valid question. I'll try to answer it from my side as well. Again, if you're asking specifically about people designing those games and building them, like these guys know better.
Sammy, a
like
bit of an audio issue from you.
Oh, can you guys hear me?
Yep, there we go. Better.
Okay. So, yeah, I'll try to answer that question. And probably not with examples, that I'm working on currently at the moment, but I can give you examples. So VR AR is like massive as a overall sector, right? There's all sorts of things within it, and there's things, whether it's gaming or other than gaming, or things that AR that make much more heavy use of AI and deep learning. And a lot of typical examples are things with things using AR that require a lot of image recognition on the fly in real time. And these things, like the good version that we've seen, like make heavy use of that deep learning. We actually like invested in a startup earlier this year that is focused on the AR, cloud kind of space, and basically uses your phone camera to generate a lot of things and add, whether it's game mechanics or more like different uses within AR. But and this team comes from like robotics and artificial intelligence background and just jumped into AR. And there's a lot of similar things you see in VR. I would just say that typically with VR gaming, without generalizing a lot, but I would say that there's a lot of things you can do without needing to go into deep learning things. And again, I'm saying a giant caveat. I'm sure people have found amazing use cases for it and applications. But for most typical use cases you're thinking of, you need some kind of character AI, quote unquote, that just interacts with you, or maybe like you're shooting some zombies, and the zombies, like, I'm sure Steve can talk more about that, but whatever you guys have built into how the zombies interact with you, or like the outside characters that are non-player characters, NPCs basically. And in some cases you have some different turning points in the story, or choose your own adventure and so on, but I wouldn't like lump these under the same category as something like deep learning, or like, things more on the machine learning aspect. But it's definitely part of like the general AI in some sense. I think Steve maybe could talk more about how you guys handle non-player characters and like all these mechanics.
Sure. So, yeah, I think just to real quick before that, to get to your point of like machine learning and deep learning with AI and games, I think like we were talking about with the Uncanny Valley thing before, right? Like the Uncanny Valley is like the GPU side of VR. And the AI and deep learning is like the CPU side of VR, and, right?
Right.
And so both of those things have a problem, which is you only have, I know the GPU rule because, man, that's the easiest one to break, is 11 milliseconds to deliver a frame in VR, right? So you have to make sure all of your graphics go through the pipe in under 11 milliseconds, regardless of what their card is, whether it's a 970 or a 2080 Ti, right? So the same problem exists with the CPU and machine learning. And while I think the CPU limit is like 5 milliseconds, don't quote me because I'm probably wrong. Like this is why Jeremy knows more about this stuff than I do. But like you can't choke that, right? Like you can't go over it or you drop frames again because now the CPU can't deliver the frame to the headset. And so things like physics and skeletal meshes running around in your environment, all of those things eat your CPU, and your actor count in the scene can also do it. And so we're in the same situation as the Uncanny Valley is with the GPU in film, where for VR and AI, like true deep learning AI, we're going to have to wait a while, I think, until like the i9 chipsets are ubiquitous, or whatever the i11, like whatever the chipset is after that. And we'll see things like the engines like Unreal and Unity writing deep learning into the engine, which I think Unity's already started. I don't know where Unreal is on it. Right. I'm a terrible partner. And hopefully Pancake Games, if I can give a shout out real quick to my friend Chet at Bossa Nova Studios, I don't know what he's working on, but he has publicly stated and done some talks that their focus of their next game is NPC AI related. And it sounds like there's a little bit of machine learning involved because he doesn't want branching linear social quests and stuff like that in the game. He wants characters to react to the totality of what you've done in their world, right? That they seem intelligent and they have intelligent replies to you, which is going to require some sort of deep learning involved with their AI. And they can do that because they've got a huge audience to sell to and a lot of success and a lot of funding and a lot of probably tech runway leading up to this, right? Whereas VR is still in its infancy, and we're going to rely on studios like that and game engines like that to create those things for us to then take and integrate into our games, right? But so as far as speaking to how we make AI, right, in games do the things that we want them to do, it's really just a lot of like traditional games trickery that we're fooling you into thinking that the AI is really intelligent. Because we are listening to what you're doing in game and we're changing the AI behavior based off of what you've done in game, right? That the AI has a bunch of triggers and a bunch of thresholds that say, can I see the player? Can I hear the player? Are they close enough to me? What's my reaction when I do hear and see the player? And there's this whole logic state that their logic falls through. So,
and by the way, these things work really well. I mean, there's, like Steve was saying, it's like almost like an uncanny valley thing. If these things work really well, no need to go overboard and overclock everything just to add some real AI into it.
Yeah.
Great.
Yep.
Thanks.
So
I'll switch it up just a bit. So one thing that we've been doing with our panels is taking a selfie. And I know that Greg's battery might be running real low. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to walk over here. And if everybody just wants to huddle around this area and then look towards the back of the room, and then we're all going to throw up some emojis, and I'm going to take a selfie of us just for fun. So
Nice.
So let's do this. Let me get my little camera out here. All right. So yeah, go ahead and throw up all your emojis. All right. Let's do one more. Just like awesome. Thanks.
excuse me.
Another fun little feature. So, all right. Now, Dan, I know you had a question too. So, Dan, if you want to ask your question quickly, and then I'll just say a couple quick things. So go ahead, Dan.
Hi, can you hear me?
Yes.
Yes. Hey, Dan.
Brilliant. Hi, how you doing? Are any of you aware of the Kronos Group's initiative with the OpenXR standard for VR?
Yeah. Very aware of it. I'm not in
I don't
it,
know
but
if-
yes.
I don't know if you wanted to just explain briefly what that is to the audience, for the people that don't know, and then I'll proceed with my question, if that's okay.
Oh, sure. So real quickly for everybody since we're on broadcast, the question is, well, you're going to ask a question involving the Kronos Group. So the Kronos Group, for everybody involved, is a multi-industry-wide initiative from multiple hardware and engine vendors to come up with a universal standard for VR that all engines and all hardware will use. So it'll make it way easier for developers. Okay, go ahead and ask your question.
Okay, can you hear me still?
Yes.
Yes.
That's okay. I don't know if it's crashed, but it's completely black in the headset, but you can still hear me, so that's fine. Okay, so how crucial do you think that is for VR to, in the future, gain more mainstream adoption? Because at the moment, everything is completely fragmented, and from hardware to software, it's developing a rapid rate. So it's confusing for people new to VR, and especially the people that aren't so technology minded. So it's a bit of a minefield navigating through all the different hardware and software and platforms at the moment. Do you think it's crucial for this standard to develop to really push VR into mainstream adoption as a general consumer device in every household?
Absolutely. I think standards are very important. The thing that typically happens, not meaning anything specific about Kronos or other organizations trying to set standards or the kind of de facto standards that happen, but the thing is, when an industry is evolving very, very fast, oftentimes, everyone says, each person says like, hey, like let's try to all gather around like standard X, and then some other innovation happens somewhere else, and someone is experimenting with something, and maybe some other studios like, oh, we actually tried this thing, and then it works, and then somehow it becomes a de facto standard across a smaller circle, and then I have standard X and then Y, and then someone says like, let's try this other thing, and all of a sudden you have 5 standards, and there's a need for someone to have an umbrella standard across the whole, like 5 different things to unify everything, and then kind of a universal standard. But then it doesn't get adopted by everyone around it because it's still popping up, and it's kind of like a, it's like a catch-22, like you're saying. It's a fragmented market, and then innovation is coming from all these different indie developers here and there, and across different geographies, and people sometimes people just don't know about the other standards existing. It's nothing that's ill-intended, but all of a sudden you have a universal standard that's only adopted by some people. So now is there a need for a new standard and so on? So I think absolutely it's very, very important, and it's solving real problems. The question always is about how do you ensure adoption across different things, and how do you not redo the work because of focusing on some ways of solving the problem. But that's an issue with also standards, even like USBs, like things across any kind of technology standard that's ever happened. I don't know if that answers the question. You guys want to add anything?
I think Chronos is incredibly important, but it's important to me as a developer. It will be completely transparent to any consumer that they don't even have to know it exists. It's kind of like if I ask a consumer, what is the USB standard? They don't know. They can't tell me. All they'll know is it's a square cord I plug into my PC and I can use my thing, right? So I don't think Chronos is going to actually create mainstream adoption for VR. What it's going to do is it's going to make developers' jobs easier to enter that market, right? Whichever market it is, and whichever place the hardware is at, whether it's the wireless, Quest, right? Whether it's developing for the Go or, Daydream, whether we're making stuff for Vive or Oculus, or, even if whatever, there's some really weird tangential systems that I don't even know if Chronos can fix that you see in warehouse arcade VR, where they're using backpack rigs with an Oculus Rift HMD, and they're tracking everything in the room via an OptiTrack, motion capture system, and then there's an entire thing running in the background that's capturing all the positional data from the motion capture, identifying the unique user, and then passing the frame to that specific HMD so he sees it in the space, right? I don't even know if Chronos is tackling that, right? Those are almost all proprietary systems. And I think OptiTrack even sells a plugin to make that system work or something like that. And so Chronos is mostly so that when we make something for one headset, it's easy for us to also get it on another headset, right? And that doesn't necessarily mean that that's going to make marketing mainstream, because to make VR mainstream, because to get VR mainstream, that's like a marketing consumer price point issue. The content has to be there. Content is king. Content drives hardware adoption, at least as far as VR is concerned right now. But I don't think Chronos is going to make somebody go out and buy a VR headset. Is where my answer is. It makes my job easier, right? It makes the developer's job easier, and that makes it awesome. We love it. We hope that they keep succeeding and they keep getting a universal standard to make our jobs easier. But I just don't think it's really going to push consumer adoption. So.
Well, thank you guys, and thank you everybody for being here. We've gone over by a little over a half hour, so I wanted to thank all of our panelists very much. So Steve, Sammy, Greg, thank you. I also do want to thank David for kind of helping set up the conversation, even though he was not able to be here, unfortunately. Also, I want to thank AltSpace for helping us, for working with us in making this happen, and also thank Metal. And you can check them out at metal.com. Their name's up on the screen behind me, and they have some great tools for content creation and post-production for you to check out. So thank you everyone for being here. You're welcome to stick around and mingle with one another, and hope to see you tomorrow as well. Tomorrow we have a few different things coming up. So if we get that slide right there. So we have a chat at 7:30 in the morning with John Curavia, who's the co-founder of HelpNick, and he's discussing building consumer-facing businesses in the developing market. Then at 9, we have another panel discussion with looking at career paths in VR and kind of where your skills might fit, even if you're not a developer or maybe you're a writer and you want to kind of contribute to the storylines. And then at 11 a.m. Pacific time, we have a panel discussion focusing on education and empathy and looking at using VR as a tool for education. Colleen, who's here and asked the question earlier, will be one of our panelists as well. So thank you again, and hope to see you tomorrow for as many of these as you can make. And thanks.
Thanks, everyone.
Thanks a lot, everyone.
Thanks
for coming.
Thanks for coming. Thanks for watching from home.